Hi, everyone. It is Lindsay Baker with Rescue Stories and my very special guest, Jeffrey Masson, New York Times best-selling author with his latest book, Lost Companions, Reflections of Death of Pets. Jeffrey, I am so pleased to have you here today. Now, you have worked, your career is so extensive. Can you just give us a little short, quick synopsis of how you got to this point?
Gosh, yeah, it's hard to do quickly, but I'll do my best.
It doesn't have to be quick. Take your time.
Okay. So I was a psychoanalyst for many years. And if anybody goes to the internet and puts Jeffrey Masson psychoanalyst, they'll get the whole story. It's there. I got into disputes with other Freudian analysts because I believe that when women told you about child sexual abuse, it was real, it was not fantasies. We're talking the late 70s and early 80s when almost all psychiatrists and analysts believed that women were making it up. I did not believe that. So I was in tremendous dispute with the Freudians, with Anna Freud, who had been a friend of mine, Freud's daughter. And in the end, they released me, sent me packing, told me I could no longer be the director of the Freud archives. I couldn't be a psychoanalyst. And so I moved in with Catherine McKinnon, the great Harvard professor of law. And she lived on a ranch in California. And she said, Jeff, don't think about psychoanalysis. Think about what you love. What do you love most? Wow. Animals. Think about animals. Right. And so I started, this was a long time ago, about 27 years ago, I started the research for When Elephants Weep. And to my great surprise, that was about the emotional lives of wild animals. And it became a bestseller. It sold 1 million copies, which really surprised me. It's not that it was such a great book, but I think it validated what people already knew because they had lived with dogs and cats and birds, and they knew they had emotions. So I was very pleased with that. And then I wrote, and that turned me vegetarian because when I saw how much like us these animals were, especially elephants, and sometimes even more than us, better. Wow. Elephants, for example, mourn more deeply, I believe, than humans, or equally deeply in any event. So I then wrote a book called Dogs Never Lie About Love because I love dogs. And that too became a bestseller and sold 1 million copies. So my publisher said, you can do anything you want now. And I said, well, I really want to look at farm animals. Oh, I don't know about that, they said. But I did, and I wrote a book called The Pig Who Sang to the Moon, which was about the emotional lives of animals living on a farm, if you can call that life. And that turned me vegan. So that was 17 years ago. And since then, I've continued to write. So I've now written my 31st book, which is this one. And I think I'm going to stop now because I'm almost 80. And I think
no, don't stop.
80, you have the right to stop.
No, don't stop. Don't stop. You have so much.
Lindsay, if you tell me not to, I won't.
Before we move on and I forget, can you tell your story about when you were observing, you wanted to observe wild animals, so you went and observed an elephant, and because you were a professor of Sanskrit, can you just fill that whole little bubble in there for us?
I remember that. Yeah, it's actually, I mean, it's entertaining, but it's also very scary. I should not be here today because I was stupid enough to antagonize a wild elephant. I didn't think I was doing that. I thought we were making friends. So what happened, I was with my girlfriend at the time. We we had 2 small children with us. They stayed behind, and we got up at 6 o'clock in the morning and wandered out into the forest to look for elephants. And we passed these very large observation points. They were like these huge posts, and you could climb up and sit on the top and watch the elephants. And my girlfriend said, let's do that. And I said, no, let's walk right up to the elephants. So sure enough, we met a troop of wild elephants.
Oh my God.
And I did not stop at a respectful distance as my girlfriend did. I said, no, you don't understand. They probably know who I am. I will speak Sanskrit to them. At that time, I was a professor of Sanskrit. they will hear this sound. They'll recognize I'm a friend. They'll probably bow down and let me get on their backs, and we'll become best friends. That's not what happened. What happened was there was a baby with a matriarch, and I did not even realize it was a female. And I started chanting in Sanskrit, Bobo Gajendra, hail to you, king of elephants. Well, not a king. They might not have liked the gender mistake. And she looked at me and she flapped her ears. Now, elephant researchers, and probably the general public by this time, knows that when an elephant flaps its ears, she is not happy. I thought she was greeting me. And I turned to my girlfriend. I said, look, she recognized me. She's saying hi. And at that moment, she went, ah! She charged.
Oh, my God.
I had one of those moments where you realize, what is wrong with me? I am going to die because I've been so stupid. I mean, suddenly I got knowledge at that moment.
Horrible.
She's a wild elephant. Horrible. She doesn't want me coming close to her baby. What on earth were you thinking, Jeffrey Masson? Headlines tomorrow, Sanskritist loses his head. I thought I'd be dead. And I ran away, and she followed me. I ran to a tree and tried to jump up, but I couldn't make it. And I then ran through the grass, hysterical, screaming, help, help, an elephant is trying to kill me. I fell in the grass, which saved my life, because elephants have poor vision. And I saw her, she took her trunk and she was trying to smell me out. She couldn't see where I was because I was in the grass. And then she ran back to the tree, thinking maybe I'd somehow snuck up into the branches, and I was able to escape. And my heart was pounding. We went back to the lodge. And I then said, like an idiot, I said to the people at the lodge, you really should put up a sign saying, wild elephants do not approach. And they looked at me and they shook their head, poor pathetic guy. They said, most people know that you don't approach a wild elephant. You don't have to tell them. But it did teach me that they had strong feelings.
Yeah. They're quite aware. And people don't give them that credit for that. Oh, that's my right. God.
Yeah. Very scary. I mean, I really was that close to losing my life.
So I guess one question that comes up a lot, and that comes up because people are now being confronted with the fact that it's basically indisputable that meat is not a sustainable diet. And therefore they are being constantly, they're getting all these messages about a vegan diet. And I know that you spoke about the resistance you found. In fact, I think I have a clip about it. If I'm not, I do have one clip here. Let me just, I think you talk about that. Should we play that real quick?
Sure.
Asking it in as polite a way as possible is, why do you eat meat? And I'm really curious about that. I didn't mean it as a rhetorical device. I really wanted to understand. And on my book tour recently, I've just been to 12 cities, and people have told me all of the excuses, or some of the classic excuses to why they eat meat. So I made a list of them, and I'll just read them now and come back to a few key ones. One is that, and you've all heard, I'm sure all of these, animals who lead a happy life and have an easy death should be our food. That's the most common one. 2, all other animals eat meat, why not us? 3, humans have always eaten meat. It is natural. 4, God told us to. Glad you laugh. I told that to Dan Ellsberg, and he says, but God also told Bush to invade Iraq. Whenever God tells you something, get a second opinion. I agree with that. The protein myth, the strength myth, the healthy diet myth, because it tastes good, because it was good enough for my parents, it's good enough for me, acculturation, socialization. Some people at some point in history had no choice. The animals would die out as a species unless we raised them for food. Plants, I'm glad you laughed at that one too, because I heard that more often than anything else. Plants suffer, otherwise I'll be a social outcast. That's true, actually, except here. And but the actual strange, real reason that most people eat meat is not something that I heard at all. And that's because we can. And nobody ever says that. It's interesting. Now, I'll go back just to a few of these to talk about for a few minutes, and then we'll open it up for discussion, because I'm sure you have as many interesting ideas on this as I do. About the happy life and an easy death.
All right. I thought maybe you could fill in the blanks on the rest of that, some of those comments. Like, that's a good one to start with, because this humane farming thing, and I've even heard that my relatives, they like cashmere. And so they go, oh, we get it from ethically farmed cashmere. And I'm going, well, that doesn't exist, but okay. So can you address that whole that question, or some of them?
I was fascinated. I haven't seen that clip ever. What struck me most is, gosh, I was a lot younger then, wasn't I? But that was 17 years ago, so I was.
You don't look any different. You look the same.
Okay. Oh, yes, I do. I like myself then, I have to say. But what interested me is that I have not changed my views. I think everything that I raised at the time is significant.
Wow, that's amazing.
Those are the kinds of things that people say, and they still say them. Mm-hmm. Perhaps a bit less now. Some of them they wouldn't. I mean, they wouldn't say we need meat. I don't think we hear that very often today, because even we're not vegans, recognize that you can live a very healthy, in fact, a healthier life without eating meat. So, I mean, some things have changed, but people do continue to say that these animals had a good life and an easy death. And first of all, there's no such thing as an easy death. And certainly not for a young animal. All right, when my mother was 97 and she was dying, I thought, she's having an easy death. But she was 97 years old. Yeah. I can understand that. And I've had people say this to me in a restaurant. And I mean, I'm kind of wondering now whether I should ever agree to have meals with people who are not vegan, because it's very upsetting. It's very upsetting. And I was having this very discussion with a woman who was tucking into lamb. And she said to me, well, these animals have had, I make sure, I think, what was the phrase used? Ethically sourced meat. I said, wait a minute. And she said, this lamb had a good life. I said, what are you talking about? This is a lamb. This is an animal. This is a baby. This animal lived 8 weeks. How can you call that a good life? That's absurd. And you know what? That meal did not end well, because I was I wouldn't say incensed, but I was passionate about it. I said, it's sheer hypocrisy to eat a baby pig or a baby lamb or a baby chicken and say they've had a good life. At least admit that this is terrible, but that you want to eat them because you want it. You like the taste and you don't care who suffers. If you tell me that, I can't argue with you. But please don't tell me they've had a good life. They have not. I'm sure you agree with that, Lindsay.
I absolutely do agree with that. And yes, I get bumped up against that because I've been very transparent about this. My husband is not vegan. So you can imagine the conflict.
That's a difficult thing. Work on him.
I'm working on him, but he is so, he has such a wall where even if I broach the subject, he becomes infuriated. Wow.
Have you thought of another?
I thought of leaving.
You know, the first question, I met my wife, who's, I agree, much younger than I am. She's a pediatrician. And we met 26 years ago. And my first question is, how do you feel about eating animals? And she said to me, I don't eat them.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. The next one was, do you drink? No. Do you smoke? No. Do you like psychiatry? No. Medical doctor, didn't like psychiatry. But after about 4 more questions, I said, you know what? We're going to get married. She said, there's only one problem. I said, what? She said, I wouldn't even have coffee with you because you're 25 years older than me. And now we have 2 grown sons.
Wonderful. So you proved her wrong.
And we're both vegan. She went vegan 17 years ago, too.
Well, see, I wasn't vegan when I met my husband, and we were together for 15 years before I became vegan. So
give him good books. There are lots of good books out there, more and more every day.
He won't read them.
He won't read them.
He won't read them.
Okay. Show him.
I'll have to tell you another time. It's a long story. He ties it into his health and psychological, but it's much more interesting to talk about your book. And I want to just jump into that a little. And before we go on, I just want to tell everyone that if you're just tuning in, I am here with Jeffrey Masson, New York Times best-selling author. He's here to talk to us about his book, his latest book, Lost Companions. And it is very poignant, and our audience is going to love this story because we are all pet lovers. We don't even call them pets, companion animal lovers. So Jeffrey, can you just give us a little bit about your book, and then we'll go back to some of the other juicy stuff, but I want to get your book out there. So go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote it because I had a dog, and I think you have a picture of that dog there. Benji, you want to show Benji to people?
Absolutely.
There he is. That's Benji, and me a lot younger as well in New Zealand. That was me in New Zealand with Benji. Benji came to us because he had been a guide dog for the blind in New Zealand, and he didn't want to do it. He had no interest in that. He wanted to be with a family. He wanted to be with children. He wanted to be with other animals. He was just... I wrote a book about him eventually called The Dog Who Couldn't Stop Loving.
Oh, yeah.
Benji, at the time, I thought he was unique. I don't think so now. I think there are a lot of dogs who can't stop loving. Not just us. They do love us in ways that are remarkable. I mean, there is no example in nature of one creature who loves another creature beyond the way they love themselves. Only dogs. They love us more than they love themselves. So it's extraordinary. And it has never been explained psychologically how that could even exist. But it does, no question. He loved chickens. We had pet rats. He loved them. He would kiss them. He loved cats. He loved other dogs, people, birds, everything. He loved every creature on earth. And as he started to get much older, we brought him first from New Zealand to Australia.
Yeah.
And then we moved, my wife is from Germany. We moved back to Germany thinking we would stay there. But it turned out we couldn't. Her mother had been very ill, but her mother got better. And she wanted to practice in Australia, pediatrics. So we came back, but they would not allow us to bring Benji back here because they said he was too old. He might die on the trip. So our son stayed with him in Berlin, and eventually he became more and more ill. He was 14. My wife flew back to be with him in his last week. I stayed with our younger son, and he died a very peaceful death in the mountains with lots of friends around him. But it was very difficult for me, and I started thinking about this, and I thought, I'm of an age, almost 80, when I have to start thinking about my death too, and about the death of dogs and people who lose cats. What do they feel? And how is society treating this? And I wanted to read something serious on this, and I couldn't find anything. There's not a lot written about it. Most of it is about how we're going to see them in the afterlife. And I unfortunately can't believe that. I wish I could, but I'm an atheist, and I don't believe there's a rainbow bridge and we'll meet them somewhere else. So I wanted to understand more about this. And in the end, I felt, well, I better write about it if I want to understand it. So I wrote Lost Companions, Reflections on the Death of Pets. And it was very valuable to me because I discovered that a lot of people knew more about this than I did. They had studied more. They knew about how to memorialize, which I didn't know. As in most of my books, I learned as I went along, and that's what I like about writing.
Can you give us a couple of examples of ways that people can memorialize, and can you talk about the grieving process and so forth? I think that would help a lot of people.
I mean, the grieving process, what I learned is I can remember many, many years ago when I probably the first memory of losing a dog for me was my dog Taffy. And I remember that people told me, stop crying. It is only a dog. And even then I thought, this is no it. This is Taffy. This is my closest friend. And it's not only a dog. This was for me a family member. And I must have been about 10 or 11 at the time. And I remember feeling that very strongly. I didn't have the words for it. I couldn't have told them, don't invalidate my suffering. But that's what it was. I knew that I had every right to feel as deeply as I did. And I was disappointed that people would tell me, get over it. Now, I believe that today, very few people would say that. They would not tell you, get over it, it's only a dog, it's only a cat. You're not likely to hear that. But there are people who believe that we shouldn't take it quite as seriously as we do. And the whole burden of my book is that that's wrong. You take as much time as you need to mourn and do whatever it takes. And if that means spending a year in a kind of mild depression, feel free to do so. I even read, I think I talk about that in the book, there was a well-known writer in England who said, I grieved more, I mourned more deeply when my cat died than when my father died. Now, you kind of wonder what kind of a father he had.
Yeah. Or what?
Yeah, he's entitled to that.
Yeah.
And there are people who suffer greatly when their cats or dogs or birds or any other animal dies. So in the book, I do talk about lots of different animals, not just cats, dogs, and birds.
What are some of the other animals?
Well, I don't know if any of your viewers will know what a wombat is, but they're quite common here in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
They're almost, kind of a combination of a pig and a rat, big and massive, and they build these great tunnels under the ground, and they're not afraid of anything because they're little tanks. And they're wonderful animals, but very rarely does anyone have one as a, quote, pet, a word that I'm sure you and I don't like any longer.
Right. We don't like
but there is a woman, a quite extraordinary woman. She was a great feminist, and I always forget her name. So I'm just looking for it here. But if you go online, Val Plumwood, a remarkable woman. She's been dead for a number of years, but she's most famous because she once was caught by a crocodile who rolled her over 3 times in the water trying to kill her, did not succeed. She survived, but very badly injured.
They try to pull you under and drown you, right?
Right. They roll you over under. They grabbed hold of her thighs, took her down under the water. She was in a very remote place, and then rolled her over. And she got away once and tried to climb up the bank, and it pulled her back down.
Oh my gosh.
And 3 times, and the crocodile gave up on the ground. And look, she wants to live that bad. Let her live. I don't know why, but she did survive barely. And she then lived by herself in a very remote area. I guess she was kind of turned off of our world. I don't know. I've never met her. But she wrote a beautiful essay shortly before she died about making friends with a wild wombat. And this wombat would come to her garden every day and spend the day with her. And at night, he would leave, she would leave, I don't know. But I just love that. That seems to me the absolute perfect relationship. An animal who's with you when the animal wants to be, and then leave at other times. And that's what that wombat did. And when that wombat died, she grieved very deeply. And I totally understand that. And then there's the case of, there's so many of these. There's Charlie Russell. Have you heard of him? He was the bear man, an extraordinary man. And he was living in Russia. The Russians allowed him into this remote area where there were lots of wild bears. And he built a cabin. He built his own plane to get there. He built a cabin, very self-sufficient kind of guy.
Wow.
He'd never been to university, but boy, did he know about bears. Look him up, Charlie Russell, on the internet. And when he was there, the government would send him these little cubs, and he would rehabilitate them and release them into the wild.
Oh, nice.
And evidently a mother bear had been watching this. And one day she approached him. He was sitting on a log in the forest, and he looked up, and there was this mother bear with 2 babies. And he thought, I'm dead, because there is no animal more protective of their young than a mother bear. Because some male bears are very violent, like male humans sometimes, and they want to protect their young. And he thought, she's going to eviscerate me. But that's not what she wanted. She came and she left the 2 bears with him and wandered off. And he understood, I'm the babysitter. She must have watched him and seen how he took care of baby bears, realized that this was a man she could count on. She had things to do. So, hey, you babysit my bears. I'll be back.
Oh my gosh. You know, we all have stories about our dogs and cats like that. But when we hear wild animals, that story, and there was the other one that we talked about, the rooster. Remember that one? A few minutes. Yeah, I'll show a picture. We have a little picture of a rooster with hens, and there was one. Can you tell that story?
Well, as I remember, it's a long time ago, but I remember I was investigating chickens on a farm, and the farmers would often say, oh, you know, these are just bird brains. And I didn't believe that. And I said, well, but have you ever noticed that the rooster, when he finds a really wonderful piece of food, he holds it in his beak and he brings it to one of the hens? So what he's doing, he has empathy, he has compassion, he has generosity. He's not selfish. He wants the hen he wants to make sure she gets the food first. And so this is not a bird brain. This is a lot better than most humans do. And, you know, it was things like that that got me. I thought that's what actually turned me vegan. When I saw that, I said, well, how do you justify eating the egg of this animal when they have feelings just as profound as your feelings? They care about one another. They care about their children. They care about their wives. They care about their friends. And when they lay an egg, it's not for you. They're not giving you that egg. This is not a gift. Stop it, Jeff. And so I did. I have never, it's been 17 years since I've eaten an egg or had any milk. And the reasons have simply to do with suffering. I don't want to be complicit. I don't want to add to suffering. There's enough suffering in the world without my adding to it.
But what about the people that will say, you know, it's that whole human suprematism thing that's so hard for them to break through? They'll say, well, there is so much suffering in the world. There are people suffering in the world. And, you know, your focus should be there first. And
well, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I love the fact that my wife is focusing on children because she's a pediatrician. But that doesn't prevent her from thinking about animals. It's not like we can only do one thing in the world. Right. And I think that anybody concerned with animals also has to be concerned with human rights, with equality, with racism. The way we treat animals is just an example of racism. It's just speciesism.
Another ism.
Pardon?
Another ism. Ageism, racism.
Yes. We have to be aware of all of them. We have to fight all of them, and we have to be grateful for some people who decide, I'm going to do this ism because I'm good at it. I know more about racism than you do, which I'm sure is true. So that's my specialty. But I want you to listen to me and think about it. Yeah. And I think, of course. So the one thing I don't like is vegans who tell me I don't care about humans. That is not good for me. I think if you care about animals, you have to care about humans. And vice versa. If you care about humans, you should also care about animals. And you should care about, the main thing there is suffering. Suffering is bad, whether it's in humans or animals. And, you know, I mentioned that business about plants. Well, only in the last few years have people become aware of the fact that plants do communicate. They really do. And sometimes I will get a strange feeling when I'm about to eat a potato and I pull it out and it's growing these little shoots. So sometimes I say, okay, not you. I'm going to put you in water and let's see you branch out. But I wish there were a way that we could not, one day we'll probably be able to take a pill and that's it. That's our
think so. Eventually. We'll become breatharians.
Breatharians. I love it. I knew one once, but she died young.
It's so interesting that you talk about that sensitivity to any living essence being, right? Because
Yes.
my mom this morning, my mom had to move in with us, and we're trying to buy another house and so forth. And she loves spending time in my studio, which is where I am now. Anyway, so there's food here sometimes. So we've gotten an ant problem. So we went in, she was into the bathroom and she saw 2 little ants and she just took a rag and just wiped it. And I got infuriated. I said, you didn't even kill it. Why don't you at least kill it if you're going to kill it? It's like she looked at me and she burst into laughter.
Yeah, it's an ant. It's only an ant. Well, now, interesting that you should raise that. I know this sounds almost psychotic, but I have become attached to a little bug. It lives in our bathroom behind me, and it has the prettiest little wings. It's some sort of tropical fly, and it's been there for months and months and months, and every day it's there, and I feel like I'm attached to this little guy. And there is nothing. If somebody said, I'll give you $1 million if you squash it, I'd say, no, I will not do that. It's a living creature. I will not hurt it.
Yeah.
And 2 days ago, it lives right next to the faucet. And I was looking at it and I opened the faucet and at that moment it flew and the water got it and it went down the drain.
Oh.
And I was brokenhearted. And yesterday, I promise you, I went in the bathroom, I looked at the drain and out he flew.
No!
He survived.
Fantastic.
Now, I'm telling you, Lindsay, because you can understand this, but 99.9% of people would think Jeff has lost his mind. He's got dementia. Well, he's 80 years old. Give him a break. But he loves a bug. But my philosophy is, why would we harm any living creature if we don't have to?
Exactly. And that's just kind of sums it up. The golden rule, do unto others. It's just, if we lived by that, I think everything would eventually go back into alignment.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm not saying there would never be problems, because that's growth as our society develops. We have to have, things, we have to have challenges. There are challenges in growth, but it would be so much better with compassion. And I know that's what your books are about, 10 books on animals. What are some of the things that you've learned about how can we apply that to humans? How can we apply what you've learned about animal behavior to human behavior? And when it comes to people being troubled and so forth, and would normally go to a psychoanalyst or something, talk about that whole thing if you can. I know
it's so interesting, because usually the question goes the other way. What can we learn about animals from humans? But I like your question. What can we learn as humans from animals? Well, I do believe, and this is still controversial, but I believe that we'll learn more about it as we study it. I believe there's some animals that feel some emotions even more intensely than humans do, which, if you think about it, is not that surprising. After all, every animal can do something we can't. You see the birds and they fly, and think, gee, I'd like to fly. And the animals that dig into the earth and can do that, and the strength of elephants. And I mean, we don't find it difficult to acknowledge that animals have superior physical traits. They see better, they smell better. Dogs can now smell COVID. You must have heard that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's brand new, very important. Pretty soon they'll be in the airport and they'll sniff, and that'll help us enormously. So when it comes to feelings, for some reason, humans get offended if you tell them there's some animals that feel more deeply than you do. But sometimes I can get people to understand it by asking them, do you have a cat? and they often have a cat. And I say, well, have you ever seen anybody who can be as contented as a cat? When the cat's lying in the sun, it stretches its little arms out, and it's perfectly content. So that contentment seems to be something that they've mastered beyond what we're able to do. And similarly, at an even deeper level, I feel that probably no human can love as deeply as a dog can. That is, yeah, I really believe that, because there's always a bit of ambivalence with us. And I mean, just take a little thing. My wife, and I adore my wife. I mean, I've never raised my voice to her in 25 years. I just adore her. But if she goes out the door and she comes back 5 minutes later, I say something, oh, there we go. I say something foolish like, what did you forget? Well, you go out the door and you come back 2 minutes later and your dog looks at you and says, oh, I'm so glad you're back, and rushes up. I have so much to tell you of what happened while you were gone. Yeah. The dog is there for you. It's there constantly. Now, cats is a different story, but cats have something else. Cats have something else. By the way, I have to say, the greatest pleasure in life for me is sleeping with a cat, because they stretch their little bodies out. They start to purr. They are calm. And it's such an honor that they allow you to sleep with them. This is an animal that descends from a completely, a creature that never has anything to do with any other animal in the wild. But with us, they become close and intimate. And that's so amazing. I can never get over that.
And what's really interesting? I was watching one of those cams where they hidden cams, and they were showing some leopards playing, and they acted exactly like my 3 cats. They were fighting and jumping on each other and scratching on logs, and it just it looked like 3 cats, and
right, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the old story of you're living with a tiger, a tiger in your living room. You have a wild cat who just allows you to be there. What a privilege. How extraordinary it is. And unlike dogs, which have been totally domesticated, so there is that, a cat is not entirely domestic. And they go wild just like that. We were living in south of Spain, in Malaga, on the beach, and right in front of us was a colony of 200 cats. But they were entirely wild. You could not touch a single one of those cats. But by the way, what I found interesting, they were living together and they were not fighting. When they live with us, it's very hard. I'm sure you know, I've had many, many cats in my life. Introducing a new cat into the household is not easy. They do not like it. This is my house. I don't want another cat here. But these 200 cats were living completely in the wild, on the beach, in the rocks, by themselves. But they were wild animals. These were not domesticated cats.
Yes, I saw the same thing in Greece.
Yes, I've seen it in Greece too.
In that island, it's known for the cats.
Yes.
And they all live in harmony, and they adopt the people. They go in and out. I've always felt guilty about keeping my cats in, but like you, I've had a lot of cats, and every cat that I've ever let go in and out eventually did not come back.
I had the same experience in America. I was very fond of Abyssinians because they love to go for walks. And they're like dogs that way. And I lived in the Berkeley Hills in California, and I would go for hikes in the hills with the Abyssinian cats. And that was a pleasure. I cannot tell you what it feels like. But they always got killed because they would wander off and a car would hit them. And now in the United States, that's not true in Australia, but the United States, no shelter will allow you to adopt a cat unless you agree to keep the cat indoors. And I understand that because they live an average of 11 years if they're indoors and 2 years if they're outdoors. But I have to say it's not quite a life for a cat if they're indoors. What do they do all day? They sit at the window and they look out. They want to be free. So it's a dilemma. I don't know how to deal with it.
I know. And luckily we live in a pretty large house. It's loft. There's lots of windows, but and right outside, I call it my little Zen garden. Right below my studio, there's a walkway that I call my Zen garden. And I go out there sometimes. And of course my dogs are allowed to come out, and my cat just sits there at the window and looks at me, and I feel so depressed. I'm going to try one of those leashes, those halter leashes, I'll let them out at least, but I don't think that's going to make them happy.
You have to do it when they're very young. If you do it when they're very young and they get used to it, it works. But still, I mean, it's going to be a problem. They'll see a dog and the dog will attack. Or what I've done, I mean, you must have seen it. I don't know if they're so popular, but for a while, people would make cat ramps throughout their house. Yeah, so they turn it into a cat-friendly home. You can do that, where they can jump up and wander around.
They've got that here. They've got that. They're pretty happy, but I think they still long for that outdoor, that wild animal.
And even with dogs, look, with a dog is not free. You don't open your door and say, go out and come back when you feel like it. They go on leashes and so on. So there is that, and I do understand there are some vegans who are more radical than I am and believe that we should not have companion animals because they can't live the life they were meant to live.
I haven't met those yet. Boy.
Oh,
I'm not doubting they exist, but I haven't met those yet.
I mean, philosophically, I see their point. But from a practical level, I mean, you walk into a shelter and you see those dogs or those cats and they reach their hands out. They want you to adopt them. They'd much rather live with you than that. I mean, it is true that a cat would like to be a tiger or a lion, wants to be a leopard in the jungle. But apart from that, this is the second best life they can have.
Yeah. And I think what's happening now, as you said before, people are starting to recognize that animals are family members, and so they treat them that way. They buy cat poles, and we have all sorts of scratching poles, cat poles, beds, and they've got their, our dogs have sort of mattresses down in the kitchen. So, but people are accommodating them as a family member, is my
Absolutely. Point. And dogs, let's face it, dogs want nothing more in life than to be close to you. And if you provide them that, you take them everywhere, you take them on car rides, you go camping with them. So if you can possibly take them to work, take them to work. Everybody will love it. And if you work from home, even better for them. They love it. Yay, we're all together at home. So they probably have a better life than any other creature on earth. And even cats, you have to say, cats were solitary in the wild. They get to be with us. They're not solitary, and they enjoy it. They may not like to admit it, but they get great pleasure from it. They like sleeping with us as much as we like sleeping with them.
I mean, cats are so entertaining. That's why on social media, the most popular videos are cat videos.
My wife already says, I don't know why you think you don't have a job. You do have a job watching cat videos.
Well, before we go on, I do want to show people where they can get more information about your book. Again, Jeffrey Masson, New York Times bestselling author, Lost Companion: Reflections on Death of Pets is his latest book. He's written several books on animal behavior and how it relates to human behavior. And I can't wait to dig into all of them, to tell you the truth. But I want to show that you have a website that we'll put up in the links here, jeffreymasson.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you have a wonderful blog. And I was looking at this story about the gorilla, the endangered. We all know about that story about the Cincinnati Zoo, and you wrote about that in your blog. Did you want to comment on that for us? Would you?
Oh gosh, it was a long time ago, but what it does bring to mind is that we often don't recognize how much empathy and compassion there is from one species to another in the wild, because we just don't know about it. So I saw yesterday, you've probably seen it, a brand new documentary on a man and an octopus in South Africa. It's extraordinary. I saw the trailer. I recommend it highly. I don't know what it's called, but if you just put in octopus, man's friendship, it'll come up. It's coming out as a documentary any day now, but the trailer is there. He was in South Africa, and he went into this freezing water every single day, was deeply depressed, He got out of it by swimming. He started seeing a young octopus. He decided he wanted to meet that octopus every day. And after a while, the octopus began to trust him and to look forward to his diving. And you see the octopus running along his hand and putting his little suckers onto his arm and actually trusting this human. It's extraordinary. And you think, how many times this probably happens in the wild and we know nothing about it. But the great miracle is we get to see this every day with cats and dogs and even birds. You know, that even rats, they attach themselves to us. They enjoy our company. They trust us. I mean, that's really remarkable.
It is remarkable considering the fact, like sometimes I look at my cats and I think of how much more powerful I am than them. And they have to have this trust in this giant, unpredictable kind of whatever you want to call us being. And it's an incredible amount of trust that they have and forgiveness, you know, I mean, how many times I might have accidentally stepped on their foot or you big clawed, you know, I mean, I think that sometimes, like, imagine living with someone so much bigger than you and they've really got control. You know, we really do have pretty much control. We have control of everything. Maybe your cat can get away once in a while, and I think about how vulnerable animals are. It hurts my heart sometimes.
Yes, and we have to learn to give up some of that control. It's very hard. So we're living here in Bondi Beach, and my wife and I, we're pretty much isolated now because of COVID, but we go for walks 3 times a day, and we see a lot of people with their dogs. And some of them I can sense they're just madly in love. And I love that. You know, this is their family. Sometimes they're single and they're so important to them. And others, it's still a contest. Who's going to be in control here? And I think we have to give that up. Of course, dogs have to be able to stop when you tell them to stop so they don't get hit by a car. If they're eating something wrong, you have to teach them to leave it and they come back to you. But, you know, that's pretty much it. 3 or 4 things we want them to know. And other than that, we want them to be happy. We want them to play with other dogs. We don't want to be in total control of their lives. We want them to, you want to give any animal as much pleasure as they're capable of getting and giving. You want to give it to them. You want to take it from them. And you don't want this to become a master-slave relationship. We want to avoid conflict, right? Which presumably you've been doing with your husband.
Yes, it's been.
Bring that up.
It's been challenging. He's starting to turn a little. He's starting to move in the right direction.
He will, with you as the model.
Yeah. It's really difficult for me dealing with people that don't get that to the degree where they're utilizing animals for profit in some of the most horrific ways. Or just have that sense like people, even so much, and this is okay, if you do this, I'm not judging you, but dog shows where the animals are made, it's like children being in, you know, these beauty contests. I related to that kind of thing. But those people feel like they're really good parents. So how do you feel about that? And what words of wisdom can you give us?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, it's really a tough one. I had my son is 18, he's at the university, and one of his friends dropped by to ask how he was doing because we can't travel from state to state here, which is terrible. So he's in Melbourne, at the University of Melbourne in the state of Victoria, and we're in New South Wales, so we can't go and visit him, and his friend can. And so I asked a friend, how are you doing? Oh, wonderful. He said, I have a new life. I'm scuba diving. I said, oh, that's wonderful. What do you love most about it? Spearfishing. So I thought, well, you know, it's not my son. But I thought I would ask him in the most gentle way I could, isn't there some other way of getting pleasure than killing an animal? And I tried to talk to him, and I must say, he was totally open. And I said, look, you know, you're in this beautiful environment. It's not yours. It belongs to them. You're an alien there. You can barely manage. You have to have all this equipment. They just flit around. So in some ways, they are superior to you.
Yeah.
they're going about their business. Do you really think it's a good idea to take a spear and shoot them and kill them and cause that amount of suffering? And I tried to do it as gently as I could. And it was a lovely 18-year-old boy. And he said, I kind of never thought about it like that. Thank you for bringing that up. I will think about it. And so I was thrilled. And I said, you could have so much fun just looking at the turtles that float by. He said, yes, yesterday I saw 6 green turtles pass me. I said, well, there's no greater pleasure than that. You wouldn't have killed them, would you? Oh, never. I said, well, why kill any fish?
Yeah.
So, I'm not a good person doing it because I get too excited. But somebody who's much calmer, they can engage in what they now call, because trying to convince people that COVID is real and that climate change is real, they're talking about doing deep listening. And I like that phrase. Even though I was a psychoanalyst, I was supposed to be good at listening. I was never a good listener. And now they want you not just to be a good listener, they want you to be a deep listener. And that means you don't judge them, you listen to them, and you kind of just insert a word or a phrase here and there and see if you can make a difference. And for me, it's always a question of suffering. I say, look, I'm a coward. I hate the idea of anybody hurting my body. I would not, the very idea of torture, to me, I can't even think about it.
I can't even watch movies because it's so prevalent. Movies.
Yeah, my wife said, look at that movie, they're going to kill him. And you're right. I don't want to see it.
No.
So I say from that, imagine what the animal feels. You talk about a good death. There's no such thing as a good death. These cows that are going to slaughter, they know what's about to happen. Their blood changes. Pigs start screaming. If you had to be there, if you had to watch it, you would not do it. And you've seen this. I saw it in a German ad that my wife showed me last week. I'm sure you've seen it. An animal rights group is saying, a young couple saying, oh, I want fresh vegetables. Yes, yes. Then they go to the butcher and we say, we want our meat fresh. And the butcher says, how fresh? Oh, as fresh as possible. Okay. And they bring out a baby lamb. The two look at each other. What are we supposed to do? Kill it and eat it. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. And most people, I'd say 99% of the world does not want to kill. They don't want to be present at the act of killing. But then why would you want someone else to do it for you?
Yeah.
You don't have to, especially today. There's so much good plant-based food out there. You don't need to eat an animal. And as my wife reminds me every day, it's bad for your body.
Oh, so bad.
It's bad. Yeah, it's just not what we were meant to eat. And then you think of what it's doing to the planet. And there's so many people involved in the environment who are not really, don't want to be vegan, don't care that much about animals, but say, I have to do it because it's destroying our entire planet. So
that's a big disconnect. When they were doing, before COVID-19, they were doing a protest, Fire Deal Fridays. And initially there was a big disconnect. The vegans were not welcome, I would say. That's my opinion from observing. It didn't appear that when the vegans came and wanted to participate and say, hey, but part of this is you have to go vegan. It's creating a terrible amount, 60% of greenhouse. I don't want to quote numbers because I'm not sure, but it's a huge amount. And they were kind of at first, but after talking and kind of slowly, but there is still quite a disconnect going on. And I've seen it firsthand.
Unfortunately, there is this medium, that you're so involved in. And there are some amazing films. There really are just extraordinary.
Earthlings, Dominion.
Like what?
Earthlings, Dominion.
Earthlings was hard. Earthlings is hard. But What the Hell is amazing.
What the Hell? Yeah.
Oh my God. Blackfish was amazing. Knives Over.
You want to jump someone farm to fridge, but that's brutal.
I haven't seen that. What's the one about conspiracy? Oh my God, is that
Cowspiracy?
To them all, I think. I just love that.
Cowspiracy.
Genuine. So, there's so many ways. Make your husband watch Cowspiracy.
If I could figure it out, I'm trying. I really am.
Sorry, I keep bringing up your husband.
I'll have to buy. No, it's fine. Everyone knows. I'll have to buy your book, and he will read. He loves our dogs and our cat. He loves our animals.
That's how it should start. When you love your dog, the way we all do, and you think he's an animal, like every other animal. How is a dog different from a pig? They're not. Pigs are intelligent. Pigs wag their tails.
Oh.
Want to spend time with you. I was walking, this is an animal place in California, and I was going for a hike with Kim Sterlo, it was wonderful, to Sanctuary, and I had the feeling we were being followed. So I turned around, and there were 6 pigs. And I said, "What's this?" And she said, "Oh, they're my pet pigs." Well, she didn't use the word pet, companion pigs. And they love to walk in the woods. They love to go hiking. So if you go for a walk, just like a dog, they want to walk with you. When you see that, you can't eat bacon again.
I'm sure if he ever met a pig, like in a situation, that would be great. You have to take him to a sanctuary. I think
that's the best education you can get. There's no state in America that doesn't have a sanctuary.
That's true. We have some great ones here.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I've been covering stories on them. I just have to drag them with me.
You're in San Diego, right?
No, I'm in LA. We lived in San Diego for a while, but we moved back.
There are lots of sanctuaries right around LA. I've been to many there.
Yeah.
Wonderful ones. Yeah.
That is true. Wow. We only have 3 minutes left. This has been such an exciting, interesting talking to you. I could go on for hours. There's so much I still want to hear about, but I want to tell everyone they must get your book. They must read this book. And I think I'm getting it from my mom. She's just gone through a loss with a pet recently. And I think she loves to read. Thankfully, she still reads. And I think this make a great Christmas present or Hanukkah present for many, many people so that I know. So I'm excited. And of course, the name of the book is Lost Companions, Reflections on Death of Pets. We want to make sure we say that. And I have a picture of the book for you guys. Just to remind you here, there's the book. It's a beautiful cover. Yeah. So there we go. So Jeffrey, we have 2 minutes. Or do you prefer Jeff or Jeffrey?
Either.
I love Jeffrey for you. Some reason it just fits.
Okay. Yeah, Jeffrey's good. Yeah.
We have 2 minutes left. So
okay,
whatever you want to tell us.
I will just say this because you raised that. I remember when I was a professor at the university and students would sometimes say, Professor Mason. I said, please don't do that. You can call me Jeff. You can call me Jeffrey. And one said, how about if I call you Jeffy Baby? I said, I don't care what you call me. And I realized what this was about was hierarchy. And I don't like hierarchy. I don't like hierarchy at universities. I don't like it in human relationships where the man thinks he's superior to the woman. I don't like it in corporate things. I don't like it in politics. And I don't like it between humans and animals.
Yeah.
And if we can get rid of this sense of hierarchy, that we are somehow their superior, if we recognize that we're actually very similar. Yesterday, our neighbor had a baby. And I walked downstairs into the garden and this little 2-day-old baby was there. And I suddenly had this sense, I said to her, we're animals, aren't we? We're just, the mothers give birth just the way every other female animal does. And she said, yes. And that was not the time, but I wanted to say, so please don't eat animals.
Yeah. Don't raise your baby.
We want equality. That is, I think, the greatest thing that we can wish for on this planet. Equality between people, between races, between humans and animals. That's the ultimate lesson.
Yes, and loving the earth and respecting the earth, respect for the earth, which is tied so much into that whole system, which we're destroying.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll wake up soon.
I hope so, because it's the only way we're going to survive.
That's right. It's down to survival now. It's not preference, it's survival. So It's been so great having you here, Jeffrey. I hope you'll come on again and talk to us some more about your latest work as it comes along. I'm sure you have so much more to share with us. It's so fantastic. And thank you. Did you have to stay up late for this? It seems it's...
No, it's 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, 10 o'clock in the morning. That's not bad. You're just starting the day.
Yeah.
Well, have a wonderful day, and thank you so much.
Pleasure. You've been a wonderful hostess. I loved it.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to go off broadcast, but you can stay on for just a moment, and I'll say my goodbyes. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'll be back next week, same time, Tuesdays at 5, with more astounding guests like Jeffrey. So tune in. Catch you later.